Okay, I'd like to talk about radiocarbon dating. Uh, this is the accepted method of dating archaeological specimens. There's two ways of determining the age of artifacts: a relative dating and absolute dating. Uh, According to this method, artifacts from deeper layers are older than those from the upper layers. Absolute dating tools such as radiocarbon provide the approximate calendar age of an artifact. And here's the absolute breakdown in a lab. As you can see, uh, there's less of everything as the years goes by. You can only date the farthest they've ever gotten, and I'm gonna up it by several percentage points simply because I haven't kept up with it in the last couple of years. They can only go back really one more step past this, two more steps past this. So once you get past 60,000 years, I don't even think it's accurate past here. And I'm going to tell you about that why now. So the carbon-14 is produced by the atmosphere. It oxidizes and forms carbon dioxide. The plants absorb these photosynthetic materials. Animals consume it, and it's incorporated into their bones and tissues. And when the plants and animals die, they stop taking in, obviously, and it starts decaying. Now, here's where it gets interesting. So, this carbon-14, the way it breaks down here is absolute in a lab, in lab conditions. This is not lab conditions. Running water contaminates radiocarbon dating. When you take a sample for them to radiocarbon date it, you have to give them an approximation of how old do you think it is. That gives them a ballpark to look at. A real famous experiment, they gave a small part of a wooden I like Ike button to have it radiocarbon dated, and it was radiocarbon dated at 5,000 years when obviously Eisenhower was president, in the 50s. So radiocarbon dating is absolute in a lab, but in the real world there's water moving stuff around. That's how the Shroud of Turin, there's pollens in the Shroud of Turin that showed that it was actually in Jerusalem, the biome that's in the shroud, yet the carbon dating dates it at much closer to our time, simply because, remember, there was a fire in Turin. The shroud was burned. Was the chest it was kept in was caught on fire, and there was more carbon added to it, as well as water, because they had to put it out. And if you look at this at the shroud, there's these marks along lengthways across the body. That's where the silver melted and hit the actual shroud from the fire. And I'm just using that as an example of something. I didn't mean to go off on the Shroud of Turin here, but radiological dating is absolute in a lab, but in the real world, there's water moving stuff everywhere. It washes salts away. The Department of Energy lost control of a lot of outdoor stored uranium, and they were missing like several tons of it. And what happened, it actually had washed away. They found it spread out along an alluvial plain beyond where it was being stored, and it was unprocessed uranium, but still they were there was a big flash flood, and it moved the water moved the unprocessed uranium, and it washed it away. Same thing with uranium salts. There's several radiological dating methods. There's potassium argon. There's lead, uranium to lead. This is obviously the most common because carbon is taken in by living things. But like I said, it's iffy at best, and all the timelines are wrong. And like I said, they use the absolute dating. Remember, most dating isn't even done. You can't date any kind of dinosaur by this because it doesn't go back far enough. So if you ever hear somebody talks about radiocarbon, carbon-14 dating of a dinosaur, you know they're an idiot. You know they're an idiot right off the bat. They do a thing called circular reasoning. They date the fossils by the layer and the layer by the fossils. So that's a rubber ruler. That's circular reasoning. So you ask a geologist, what is this layer? And he'll say, well, what kind of fossils did you find in it? And you ask the other guy, and he'll say, well, what rocks did you find this fossil in? So they date each other. It's called circular reasoning. They date the fossils by the layers, and they date the layers by the fossils. And the geologic column, everybody thinks it's just something literally set in stone, but it's jumbled up everywhere. The only thing in common of everything is a thing called the grand uniformity, and that's at the base of all the bedrock around the world. You can see it at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. It's also at the bottom of the Otobai Gorge. It's called the grand uniformity. Everything else is jumbled. It's because water moved everything around. And anyway, thank you. I'm out.